Hello, I'm Marla. It was supposed to be my baby shower, my moment, but right before I cut the cake, my sister stood up and announced she got into Harvard, and suddenly, everyone acted like I was the guest at her party. They pushed aside the baby decorations I'd made by hand, called my cake the backup dessert, and asked me to move my own gifts off the table so they could make room for champagne. But that wasn't even the worst part. What if I told you it didn't end there? What if the people closest to you used your silence to write you out of your own story? Would you still call it family? They say your baby shower should feel like soft pastels and polite laughter. I believed that too, at least until 3:12 p.m., when my sister walked in holding an envelope like it was dipped in gold. The house still smelled like vanilla frosting and lemon floor cleaner. I'd been on my feet all morning, hanging garlands, adjusting folding chairs, cueing a playlist full of lullabies I imagined my daughter might fall asleep to. I even steamed the curtains last night because Jocelyn once said my living room felt dingy. I didn't want to give her anything else to mock. For the first hour, it felt almost normal. My cousin brought a stuffed fox. My aunt hugged me and said I had a glow. I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. Then my mom tapped her wine glass. "We have something exciting to share," she announced, eyes locked on Jocelyn like she was cueing a magician's act. Jocelyn stepped forward, holding a single sheet of paper. "I got in," she said. "Harvard Law." There was a pause, half a beat, before someone shrieked and others started clapping like trained seals. I was still standing behind the cake table with a knife in my hand. No one even looked at me. My dad clapped Jocelyn on the back, saying, "That's my girl." My mom hugged her so tightly I wondered if she remembered I was pregnant. 8 months and barely balanced on my own feet. The decorations I hung myself? Pushed aside. The Welcome Baby June banner? Gone. A cousin moved it, just for a second, to hang a makeshift Harvard-bound sign someone had pulled from a gift bag. I watched Jocelyn's friends, people I'd never met, wander in and slap high fives over the chips I paid for. Then someone asked me, to shift the baby gifts off the table so they could make space for drinks. I nodded, didn't even blink, just gathered them up and quietly placed them near the window. My hands were shaking, but I made sure the bows stayed intact. Jocelyn gave a speech. Said dreams only work if you don't let people's expectations limit you. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste iron. She didn't thank me. No one mentioned me, not even once. The cake sat untouched, the one I'd chosen to be soft and sweet, vanilla with a raspberry center. Jocelyn's friend pointed at it and joked, "Guess that's for the backup party." I walked into the kitchen. The counter was sticky. Someone had spilled soda next to the sink. I found a cloth and wiped it silently. Behind me, they laughed. Jocelyn's laugh. My mom's. Glasses clinked. My hand trembled, but I didn't drop the rag. I kept scrubbing the counter as if it mattered. That was the moment I realized I wasn't invisible. I was intentionally being erased. I didn't return to the party right away. I stood by the sink for a long moment, pressing the rag flat against the counter, watching the bubbles fade into nothing. The laughter grew louder, brighter, like the rest of them were breathing oxygen I couldn't access. When I finally walked back into the living room, something had shifted. Not just the energy, the space itself. The banner I'd spent hours cutting and taping, "Welcome Baby June," was gone. The string where it had been pinned now held a different sign, Harvard bound. The paper garlands I'd strung up with swollen ankles were in the trash, soaking in spilled soda. One of Jocelyn's friends had their phone propped up, filming some kind of group dance in front of the fireplace. My playlist? Gone. Replaced with bass-heavy music I didn't recognize. My own home felt borrowed. I walked slowly, pretending not to notice, like maybe if I didn't react, it would all snap back. But every step I took screamed louder than my silence. One of Jocelyn's friends, a guy with a smirk that said, "I've never been told no," pointed at the gift table and asked if anyone had seen the gin. Another guest, someone I barely knew, said, "Marla? Oh, she's probably reorganizing burp cloths somewhere." I blinked, kept walking. When I reached the cake table, I stopped. My cake, the one I ordered with soft cream frosting and little edible roses, was shoved into the fridge, lopsided and cold. In its place sat a gaudy red sheet cake with white block letters that read, "Congrats Harvard Queen." I heard someone behind me say, "That other one looked like it was for a retirement party anyway." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My hands were already grabbing napkins before my brain registered the crash near the drinks table. Someone had knocked over a glass of punch. It rolled beneath the coffee table, the liquid spreading. Reflex took over. I got down on my knees and started blotting it up. And then, heels. Click, click. Jocelyn's voice above me, too casual. "Careful down there, Marla. Hate to see you ruin someone's shoes." She didn't laugh. She didn't need to. Her friends did it for her. One of them pulled out their phone. I didn't look up, but I knew the lens was pointed at me. My knees pressed into the floor as I scrubbed. No one offered to help. They stepped around me like I was just part of the mess. Just more clutter on the floor. In that position, a memory surfaced. Uninvited. Sharp. I was 7. Jocelyn was 5. She broke my favorite porcelain doll by slamming it on the kitchen tiles. When I cried, Mom said it was my fault for leaving it out. Jocelyn got a popsicle. I got silence. Back in the present, I felt the cold frosting smear beneath my palm. People passed by, some patting Jocelyn on the shoulder, some asking how she did it, if she was nervous about moving to the East Coast. No one asked how I was feeling. No one noticed that I was on the floor. I stood slowly, pressing my palm against my thigh to steady myself. Colleen passed by, brushing her fingers against my shoulder. "Don't make this about you," she murmured. "This is a happy day." I looked at her. She smiled and kept walking. I took a deep breath, trying not to cry. Instead, I swallowed every word I'd wanted to scream. If this was what happiness looked like to them, then maybe mourning didn't have to mean tears. Maybe it meant silence. Maybe it meant disappearing just long enough for them to realize I was never the problem. I waited until the last guest left. The front door clicked shut just before 8, and for the first time in hours, the house exhaled. I stood in the hallway, staring at the trail of crumbs across the hardwood and the red cup abandoned on the stairs. The air was stale, too sweet from melted frosting, and too loud with the echo of a party I was never invited to, even in my own home. I walked into the living room, cups everywhere. A plate of half-eaten sliders balanced on top of my baby book display. Someone had kicked one of the centerpieces under the couch. The Harvard-bound banner still hung over the fireplace. The only thing that remained of my decorations was a strip of tape curled sadly near the window. My speaker sat mute on the shelf. I pressed play. My lullaby playlist resumed, barely a whisper beneath the weight of what had happened. I turned it off. There was a brochure on the couch. Harvard Law Welcome Weekend Packet. My name was listed on the confirmation email peeking out from underneath it. I didn't remember RSVPing. I didn't need to. My father had used my secondary business card, the one I kept for office supply orders and printer ink. The charge was right there in my transaction list. Airfare, hotel, rideshare credits. He hadn't asked. He hadn't even mentioned it. I picked up the paper, stared at the bolded line. Family support is the first step to academic success. My jaw clenched. I was still holding it when Mom walked in, holding a half-eaten cookie. "Marla, hey," she said casually, as if we were chatting over coffee. "Jocelyn's gonna need help with her deposits. Could you cover a few fees up front? Just until her grant kicks in." She didn't pause. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't thank me for hosting or acknowledge anything about what happened hours ago. "You're doing well, right?" she added. "The shop's stable?" I looked at her for a long second. "Mom," I said softly, "I just watched you tear down my baby shower. You let Jocelyn turn it into a personal pep rally, and now you're asking me to pay for it." She blinked, confused like I'd switched the language on her mid-sentence. "Well, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You've always been so practical." She said practical like it meant disposable. I walked past her. In the kitchen, I sat down with my laptop and checked my pending orders. Still dozens to ship. I was tired. Every part of me ached. But I remembered all the nights I'd worked until 1 a.m. while pregnant, packing onesies and typing thank you notes to strangers who supported my little store. They didn't know what I was carrying, not just a baby, but an entire family on my back. Jocelyn had private tutors. I taught myself coding from YouTube. She got a MacBook for her birthday. I got told I was too old to dream. I thought about all of it, sitting there in the dim kitchen light. Mom called from the hallway. "So is that a yes?" I didn't yell. I didn't cry. "No," I said. There was a pause. "Oh, okay," she said, like she couldn't quite compute it. But I did. I understood it perfectly, because this time, I meant it. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The house was still. I moved slowly, careful not to wake anyone. The air still smelled faintly of soda and frosting. My back ached, but it wasn't from the pregnancy. It was the weight of being tolerated, not celebrated. I made tea and opened my laptop to check shop orders. A notification blinked at the top of the screen. Order canceled. Aunt Beth. The message she left read, "I just feel it's better to invest in someone going places. Jocelyn's got a future ahead of her. Crafts can wait." Crafts can wait. Like my business wasn't real, like I wasn't real. I clicked over to the family group chat. Aunt Beth had pasted the same message there, followed by a confetti emoji and "Go Jocelyn." No one responded. No one defended me. The chat went silent, a void where voices should have stood up for me. I stared at the screen until the cursor stopped blinking. I put my phone down. 10 minutes later, I got a text from Becca, an old co-worker I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey, is that your sister on TikTok? You might want to look." My stomach turned before I even opened the app. The video had nearly 12,000 views. Jocelyn stood in my living room, mocking a pregnant woman, whining, fake crying, waddling across the screen. The caption read, "When the baby shower's not even about the baby anymore." Hashtag, #main character energy. Another one, #not everything is about you. My face flushed. It wasn't just a joke. It was a performance, and the audience, laughing. I walked upstairs, phone in hand, trying to breathe past the pounding in my chest. I bumped into Mom outside the laundry room. "You've seen the video?" I asked. She didn't look up from folding towels. "Jocelyn's just being silly. Don't take things so seriously." I stared at her. "Silly?" I repeated. "She's just having fun. Don't make it into something it's not," she said, still focused on smoothing out pillowcases. "Do you even see me?" I asked. She didn't answer, just moved past me with the basket like nothing had been said at all. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the phone screen again. The video kept playing in a loop. My living room, my baby shower, her spotlight. I opened the family chat and left without saying a word. Then I unfollowed Aunt Beth, then Jocelyn, then Mom. I turned off all notifications, tossed my phone onto the comforter, and exhaled into the quiet. From upstairs, I heard the distant hum of a vacuum. Jocelyn, still here, still making noise, still unaware of what she'd burned down. I wasn't angry because they'd left me behind. I was angry because, deep down, I'd still expected them not to. I was at the kitchen table sipping lukewarm coffee when it landed. A forwarded message from Lauren, my business partner. The subject line read, "Just wanted you to see this." The email had no name, just a vague signature, a concerned friend. It said, "You may want to consider if Marla is in the right headspace to continue managing operations. With her condition, she may be overwhelmed, emotionally unstable, even unpredictable. Just a thought before things spiral." My blood chilled. The phrasing, her condition, overwhelmed, spiral, they weren't random, they were borrowed. I'd heard those exact words from my mother before. Once, during a minor panic attack when I was 25 and working 2 jobs, she'd said, "You're spiraling again." This wasn't a stranger's voice. It was hers, dressed up in faux concern and sent anonymously. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. A text from my cousin Paige. "Hey, Aunt Colleen mentioned you've been kind of different lately, just checking in." Another from my uncle. "Your mom said you might need support right now. Happy to talk if you're open to it." Support, like an intervention was coming. They weren't worried. I wasn't unraveling. They were laying a foundation. If I ever did speak up, they'd say, "See, we told you she was unstable." I stared at my phone. It trembled in my hand, not from fear, but from restraint. Instead of replying, I opened a new tab and drafted an email to my lawyer. I attached screenshots of the email, the texts, even the TikTok. I labeled the subject, Early signs of reputational sabotage, legal documentation. Then I closed my laptop. Jocelyn passed through the hallway behind me, phone in hand, still wearing one of my old cardigans. She didn't even look at me. I didn't flinch. I didn't nod. I didn't breathe her in. They wanted silence to mean submission. I was redefining it, turning it into strategy. That evening, my mom knocked softly on my bedroom door. "Sweetheart, you okay?" she asked. "Just wanted to check in. You've been so quiet lately." I didn't answer. I heard her hand rest briefly against the doorframe. "We're all just trying to help you," she said gently. Help me. The same way someone might gently close a lid over a flame they didn't want to see grow. Inside my mind, something snapped into place. They wanted to call me unstable? I'd show them what stability looks like when it decides it's done playing nice. The next morning? But something was off. My store's 5-star average had plummeted overnight. The reviews were brutal. Owner is rude and clearly unstable. She shouldn't be running a business while pregnant. I scanned through them, heart pounding. They all sounded oddly similar, too personal, too specific. I checked IP logs on my admin dashboard, something I rarely did. 3 of the negative reviews traced back to our home's Wi-Fi. One from Jocelyn's phone, another from her laptop. The third? A burner Gmail, posted the same minute she was streaming a cooking video downstairs. This wasn't random trolling. This was sabotage. I barely had time to process when my stomach cramped lightly. Again. It had been happening for days now, but I chalked it up to stress. I reached for my prenatal vitamins on the counter and froze. The pills looked different, slightly translucent. I grabbed the spare, unopened bottle from my office drawer, compared the colors. They didn't match. I opened the hallway camera footage from 3 nights ago. There she was, Jocelyn, reaching into the kitchen cabinet at midnight, holding both bottles. My breath left me like a punch to the chest. I walked to the living room. She was sprawled on the couch, feet up, flipping channels like nothing was wrong. I held the vitamin bottle in one hand and the open laptop in the other. "You think I wouldn't notice?" I said, voice calm. She didn't even turn around. "You're overreacting." "Really?" I took one step closer. "Because if you'd done this to anyone else, it'd be called assault." Mom appeared from the hallway, hair wrapped in a towel. "Marla, stop, please. Don't make this bigger than it is." "No," I said, holding her gaze. "You already made it big. I'm just making it real." I walked straight past them both and back into my office, attached the footage, attached the IP screenshots, hit send to my lawyer. Then I printed 3 eviction notices, labeled, dated, signed. It wasn't rage that moved my hand, it was instinct. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. This was protection, for me, for her. The next morning, the kitchen smelled like toast and entitlement. I walked in with the stack of eviction papers under my arm. Jocelyn was at the counter, sipping orange juice like she hadn't tried to poison my pregnancy. Dennis scrolled through his phone. Colleen was plating eggs like we were still pretending to be a functioning family. I placed the documents down. "I need you all to read these." Jocelyn barely glanced up. "More lists?" She gave a mock yawn. "Let me guess. Boundaries again?" I slid her notice across the table. "This one has a deadline." She picked it up, eyes narrowing. "You're serious." "Dead serious," I said. Colleen wiped her hands on a dish towel. "Marla, please, can we talk like adults?" "This is me being an adult," I said calmly. "This is what protecting myself looks like." Jocelyn scoffed. "You know, courts don't look kindly on mothers who kick out their own parents and sister, especially pregnant ones. I'd hate for people to start wondering if you're mentally fit to raise a baby alone." That stopped everything. Even Dennis looked up. I took a slow breath. "If you're threatening to involve child services, go ahead. I've documented everything. Every review, every message, every bottle of pills you touched. You want to play that game?" I leaned closer. "I promise you, I play cleaner, but I play harder." Colleen tried stepping between us. "Don't do this. You're making this house a battlefield." I stared straight into her eyes. "No, you did. When you pick sides instead of protecting me." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Jocelyn pushed her chair back hard. "You're pathetic," she spat. "All this drama just because I got into Harvard and you're bitter about it." I let that hang in the air. Then I said, "You lit the match the day you turned my baby shower into your party. This is just the fire finally catching up." I left the room before they could answer. Walked upstairs, shut the door. Outside, the shouting started. Jocelyn's voice sharp, Colleen begging for calm, Dennis trying to mediate like always. But inside it was quiet. I sat down, opened a folder, and labeled it Protective Filing, Custody and Residency. This wasn't panic. This was preparation. A week passed in a blur of notarized forms, attorney calls, and quiet meals alone. My body felt heavier with each passing day, not just from the baby, but from years of silence finally gaining mass. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in flats and a loose navy dress. Practical, unassuming. Let the evidence do the yelling. At the courthouse, no one held the door for me. Jocelyn sauntered in behind me, eyeliner sharp, lips curled like she was headed to a photo shoot. Colleen wore a soft cardigan and tear-ready eyes. Dennis didn't say a word. We sat across from each other like strangers, me with a folder of receipts, footage, messages, them with expressions polished for pity. When the judge asked for clarity, I stood. This is about safety. Emotional, physical, financial. For me, for my child. Jocelyn rolled her eyes. She's hormonal. This is retaliatory. The judge reviewed the documents for what felt like hours, though the clock only ticked twice. Finally, his voice cut through. 30 days to vacate. No appeals, no exceptions. Outside, the sky was clear. Jocelyn muttered something about appealing if she felt like it. Colleen cried. Dennis just walked ahead, keys jangling. Back home, I passed by their rooms. Boxes stacked in the hallway. Jocelyn's closet gaped open, her heels tossed carelessly into a suitcase. I heard a sniff behind a closed door, but didn't pause. In the kitchen, Colleen clutched a mug. Are you really going to go through with this? I looked at her and said, I've gone through with worse. She nodded once, eyes wet, and left without finishing her tea. Dennis packed in silence. No eye contact. Maybe guilt. Maybe just fatigue. When they were gone, Jocelyn slammed the car door and shouted before pulling away, You just ruined this family! I didn't even turn, just replied, No, I stopped pretending it existed. The house echoed differently now. No clicking heels, no unsolicited comments about my weight, just stillness. I walked room to room, touching the door frames, the light switches, like rediscovering a home that had never truly been mine until now. They left chaos behind. But this time, it wasn't mine to clean. 4 years. That's how long it's been since the door closed behind them for the last time. Since the echo of Jocelyn's accusation faded into the driveway, replaced by the hum of my own breathing. Now it's just me and her, my daughter. Every morning we pack her little purple backpack and clip her braids with glittery barrettes. She likes clouds, says she wants to be a weather girl who paints the sky. This morning, she ran to me with a crayon in each hand, eyes wide with joy. Mama, today I'm going to show the class how to draw thunder, I smiled. Make it loud then, baby. Sometimes I watch her and think, she got to start where I never did, not needing to prove her worth to the room. The house is quieter now, but full. Books in every corner, plants in the windows, a tea kettle that whistles too loudly but always means peace is brewing. The shop? Thriving. 2 employees, a waiting list through spring. And me? I sleep at night. At a cousin's wedding last summer, someone leaned in and whispered, You heard Jocelyn dropped out? I nodded politely. Colleen and Dennis moved in with Uncle James for a while. Didn't end well. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need the details. Closure doesn't always come wrapped in karma. Sometimes it just arrives when you stop caring. I wasn't glad. I wasn't bitter. I was done. As we pulled up to preschool, my daughter kicked her feet against the seat. Love you, Mama, she said, swinging her lunchbox over her shoulder. Love you bigger, I whispered, walking her up the steps. She turned back once before going inside and grinned. That smile, undented, undiluted, reminded me why I did it all. Not to win, but to rebuild. Back in the car, the morning light stretched across the windshield like a new page. I placed my hand on the steering wheel, then on my belly. A quieter life, a real one. We weren't broken. We just needed space to grow something better. There's something you learn when you stop fighting for a seat at a table that was never built for you. You learn how to build your own. If you've ever felt overshadowed in your own story, I want you to know. It's not weakness to walk away. It's wisdom. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like locking the door behind you for the last time or showing up for yourself when no one else does. I spent too many years waiting for validation that was never coming. Now, I write my own ending, and so can you. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to let go of the people closest to you, just to finally find peace? Or maybe you're still holding on, hoping they'll change. Let's talk about it. Tell me below. Did this story strike something in you? If it did, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me what city you're watching from. If it didn't, that's okay too. Tell me why and where you're tuning in. I read every message. And hey, if this story reached your heart or reminded you of your strength, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story we share here. We've got more real voices, more healing, and more truth coming your way. Because sometimes, all it takes is one story to help you write your own.